we're going to sort of address that totality tonight and why it is, we need a political vehicle and how do we develop that political vehicle. Because if we're just working on the issues, then we're essentially divided and conquered because each of these are crises. And that's even without mentioning the crisis of healthcare and housing and education and debt and so on, and our health and all that. So we have a gazillion crises. If we're going to fight them effectively, we need a unifying strategy and a strategy of solidarity so that we can get to critical mass to actually fight back. And that means a political vehicle that is of, by, and for the people, that is not powered by AIPAC and Wall Street and billionaires and all of that. So we're here tonight with the strategy of building on the momentum that we came out of the 2024 presidential race with. And in that race, we emerged as the leading people-powered political party, getting 4 times the number of votes as the next biggest people-powered vote getter. We actually doubled our vote over 2020, excuse me, in spite of unprecedented political repression, with the army of lawyers trying to throw us off the ballot, with the war room that the DNC held that spent more money than our entire campaign just to conduct smears and disinformation about us, with their unabashed advertising for infiltrators and spies in order to basically disrupt our campaign. In spite of that, we came out strong, and we came out really at the head of the pack as the only pro-worker, anti-genocide, climate emergency party able to fight its way onto the ballot for a majority of voters. So no pressure, but it's really, I think, a moral imperative for us to continue building that momentum and to do it now. And this is a perfect time for it. It really is a perfect storm for deep political change because it is a time of unprecedented crisis and unstoppable resistance. The need has never been more urgent, and the possibility of change has never loomed so large because we're facing crisis in virtually every dimension of our lives, as people know, with 2/3 of working people living paycheck to paycheck, half of renters struggling to keep a roof over their heads, 44 million young and not so young people locked into student debt, 100 million into medical debt, child poverty doubling, and that was even before the recent developments under Trump, rising diseases of despair, half of youth describing themselves as hopeless about the future. Wildlife populations have declined by 70% in the last several decades alone. We're not going to make it out of here alive on the trajectory that we're on, with the 3 richest billionaires, having the equivalent of the wealth of the lower half of the population and so on. It's just, it's just fact after fact that underscores we would be crazy not to really be fighting back like our lives depend on it. And we would be crazy to trust the same old system. I think it's all well and good to consider good options when they come along, but do not by any means give up the fight. Do not lay down arms. Do not surrender. And we can talk more about the Mamdani campaign, and the interest that many people have in that campaign. But regardless of how you feel about it, we know what you can do underneath the thumb of the DNC and with the funding of the war contractors and big pharma and so on. So it's really important for people to keep up the fight. A very quick word about the latest developments under Trump with his one big beautiful bill, just to make the point, while this is absolute devastation, it builds on the devastation of the last 30 years under both Democrats and Republicans, and in fact, Obama, gave more away in terms of tax cuts than Bush had before him. And it's been a kind of trade-off. The pendulum swings back and forth, and the biggest offender is sometimes the Democrats and sometimes it's the Republicans. Now it's definitely the Republicans by any measure, but they have not been alone in creating this crisis. And we have seen the Democrats fail over and over again. In fact, we know there's abundant evidence and studies that show that people were not voting for Donald Trump. They were largely voting against Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and the legacy of the Wall Street bailouts and the housing foreclosures, NAFTA and the offshoring of jobs, the Democrats' failure to fight for Medicare for all, for even a public option sorry, hang on here, to fight for the rights of workers. One thing after another, the Democrats just kind of threw up their hands, as Hakeem Jeffries did a month or two ago when he said, well, it's their government, there's really nothing we can do. And that's kind of been their approach in a nutshell. So it's really important that we stand up and fight. The last point I want to make before introducing our other guests and welcoming Briahna to co-facilitate here with me, is that do not underestimate the power that we have right now. We're told that we are insignificant, that we're irrelevant, that resistance is futile. It's very important to stand up and fight back against that, and consider that kind of evidence of how very scared the duopoly is. And the numbers reflect this in no uncertain terms. The Democrats are at the lowest rating ever in the history of recording their favorability. They are at an abysmal 27% approval. Trump has also crashed and burned, even at 100 days, which is now, a month or two ago. Even at that point, he had the lowest rating at that time of any president ever throughout history. The mainstream media gives him enormous cover by pretending, even in his flailing and his chaos, pretending that he still has clout. This is their effort to basically shore up this predatory political system. So do not doubt our power. As Malcolm X said, we are not outnumbered, we're just out-organized. And that is the purpose here tonight, is to raise the funds and the engagement. So if you can't contribute, you can volunteer. There are so many ways to get involved, but if everybody is contributing what they can, we will have the power to begin hiring the staff, which is something we urgently need to do. And specifically, we are fundraising tonight to hire a social media communications director, a political and ballot access director to give support to our many down ballot campaigns, and to hire also a fundraising director. These are absolute essentials. It's nothing short of miraculous that we have survived without that. And it's about time to dig in and to be a serious alternative party and to give real foundation and structure to the momentum that we built with so much of your support in the last election. So with that, I'm going to briefly introduce our speakers, and we will have more dialogue throughout the evening. So first, I want to I'm going to introduce all the speakers and then Briahna, who will help facilitate the discussions with these speakers. We decided to mix it up a little bit tonight, and instead of having the usual talking heads, we're going to have more a series of discussions and interviews that Briahna Joy Gray has graciously offered to assist with. And I know I'm not just speaking for myself to say, how grateful we are that Briahna is here with us and all of our other speakers. The first of whom is going to be Medea Benjamin, who really needs no introduction. I think we're all following Medea on a daily basis because she is speaking for us all with just extraordinary and exceptional courage in her daily visits to Congress and the White House to demand what the people demand, which is being completely ignored by our legislators. Medea founded not only the amazing Code Pink, she is also co-founder of the human rights group Global Exchange, the Peace in Ukraine Coalition, Unfreeze Afghanistan, um, and also an Alliance for Cuba Engagement and Respect, and the Nobel Peace Prize for Cuban Doctors campaign. Medea has been an advocate for social justice for 50 years, and there is so much to say. I will not take the time to say it all right now, but just encourage you to follow up with Medea and Code Pink, and to definitely follow her on social media, because Medea is fighting for us all on a daily basis. With that, I'm going to hold off on the other introductions now, except for Briahna Joy Gray, who also needs no introduction. Briahna is host of the Bad Faith podcast, and I really want to know more about where that name came from, because it really represents, I think, the best faith that all of us have in any of our institutions, and certainly in our media right now. We have incredible faith and pride in what Briahna is doing. I think many people know she came out of Bernie Sanders' campaign, and before that, she was an attorney, I think out of some notorious law school that will remain unmentioned for the moment. And I'm really curious how Briahna had her changes in course, because she was on a certain very rewarding pathway, and she's decided to take to chart a people's course that has been just immeasurably helpful to all of us. She's been published in The Guardian, in New York Magazine, Rolling Stone, Current Affairs, The Week, among many others. Many of us know her from The Hill, where she had the great honor and distinction of being fired for having advocated for Palestinian human rights. So that's Briahna in a nutshell. We're so delighted to have you here today. I'm going to turn you and Medea loose, and thank you all so much for being here. And you can show your love by making a contribution at any time, so that we can put some infrastructure behind this movement. Take it away, Briahna and Medea. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Stein, for that introduction. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here speaking with you both. Um, it was interesting to hear Dr. Stein talk about or allude to the excitement around Zohran Mamdani winning the Democratic primary for the mayor of New York City. And I think the potential that exists for sort of insurgent movements to not just fight, but to win, largely because of grassroots organizing efforts and the support of the DSA in New York, even though he was outspent. And there were a lot of factors at play, including public financing, matching funds, um, that helped to keep the playing field less unequal than it otherwise might have been. But I do wonder, Medea, what your thoughts are about that moment, and if it makes you feel any differently about what we should be aiming for within the context of third party races, and whether it bucks some conventional wisdom that says start small, start very, very local, don't try to shoot for something as auspicious as mayor of New York.
I don't think the two are necessarily contradictory, because I do think that you have to populate local as well. But it is indicative of a time when so many people in this country are so disgusted with both of the political parties, and to have the issue of Gaza become such a key issue, both in the presidential race, which many of us feel that Kamala Harris just blew it by not even giving time for Palestinians to speak at the convention. And then to have Mamdani talking openly and so eloquently about Israel and Palestine, I think it shows that people understand what is going on. And you, as a media person, Briahna, I am blown away that people can see through the propaganda. Because when I turn on Fox for a little bit of uh, wonderment of what people are listening to, I start getting kind of convinced. And so the fact that people can see through that so much and are so eager to vote for and get behind, whether it's Mamdani or now you see the sanctioning that this government, Marco Rubio, has done of Francesca Albanese, and how much people all over the world have come out behind her. I think that the narrative has certainly changed, and the desire for alternatives, even though Mamdani is part of the Democratic Party, obviously he's not part of the mainstream of that party, and they are trying to shy away from him, including people like Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer. So I think we're at a moment where the Green Party really has tremendous potential.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's one take that says Zoran's success within the context of a Democratic Party validates the idea that you can work within a party, right? Of course, the reaction of the Democratic establishment to him and the fact that they're trying their darndest to prevent him from actually becoming the mayor of New York suggests otherwise. And this wouldn't be the first time that we saw someone sort of start to come close within the Democratic Party. Obviously, I'm coming from Bernie world, but it does seem like the party has its mechanisms that so far have precluded a person from actually gaining power through that vehicle. Or if you want to say that the squad members did ultimately manage to get elected, you saw a whole handful of them get ousted in the last round. Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, largely for their advocacy around Palestine, and others seem to be sort of neutered by whatever pressures exist within the Democratic Party. So that's kind of what my question is getting at: is how are you kind of internalizing what Zoran's win means for the fate of folks who want to work outside of the party? And I would also just throw in there the fact that people who are upset about Zoran, like Elon Musk, are floating the idea of an America First party of their own kind of right leaning third party effort. Uh, Dean Phillips has been speaking out again about the idea of Andrew Yang's Forward Party. We all have our thoughts and feelings about the substantive integrity of those parties, but Dean Phillips also took to the airwaves to say just today, or maybe it was yesterday, that he doesn't think the Democratic Party tent is big enough to have both him and Zoran Mamdani. So what does that ultimately mean about the ability to function as a leftist, as a progressive within the context of the two-party system?
I give props to those people who still believe in working within the Democratic Party because of the terrible, terrible things they go through. And you called it neutered, which is an interesting term to use. I look at somebody like Rashida Tlaib, who recently put out a letter to Marco Rubio condemning the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is just the most disgusting death trap for people who are standing hungry, hungry online trying to get some food for their families. And only 19 of her colleagues signed that letter.
Yeah.
19 of all the people in Congress. And so, yes, they're afraid of AIPAC. They're afraid of being associated with Rashida Tlaib. They're afraid of the mainstream of their own party. So working within the party is so difficult. And it is going to be so difficult for Mamdani. And let's hope that he can overcome it and get elected, because he has so much excitement by the grassroots who have been working day after day for him. And his message about affordability for the city is the key message, and he stays on message. But the need for a third party is absolutely essential. I go into Congress every single day, and I look around the walls and I look in those rooms as we pass by, and I see so many of the offices having the the poster outside that says "I stand with Israel." Luckily, a number of the Israeli flags have come down, and I know what it's like going into each of their offices and finding sympathetic people in the staff, but they know how hard it is to get their bosses to do the right thing. Just take the issue of cutting off offensive weapons to Israel after almost 2 years of a genocide. And thanks to Bernie Sanders, it was introduced and got a vote. The first vote had only 19 members of the Senate. The second vote had even less, 15. So, once you get inside, it's so hard to get anything done, which to me is all the more reason to say that third party, a progressive third party, is really what is needed to shift the whole political spectrum in this country.
I, the the idea, though, the reality of Zoran having such a sort of narrow and consistent messaging platform, that is, yeah, I will laud him for staying on message, but also it's made even easier by the message being so sort of concrete and relatively narrow. It's the free buses, it's the pilot grocery store program, it's the freeze the rent, right? And I do wonder if that has sort of informed your thinking about the messaging around the anti-war effort, especially when there are so many Americans across the political spectrum who are increasingly looking for an alternative to the pro-war duopoly, and for whom a certain kind of messaging could be very effective. Over the course of the last, almost 2 years of this genocide, there have been a number of sort of slogans isn't quite the right word, but sort of messages that have emerged at one time or another, whether it's ceasefire now. Um, I recently did an interview, actually just today, that hasn't come out yet, where we were going back and forth sort of about the utility of that, even, and having conversations about the ceasefire talks that happened just this past Monday. And if even talking about the ceasefire in those terms is sort of, manufacturing the consent for the idea that there's progress when there really isn't one, right? So is that the kind of message that we want? Do we need to be talking more fundamentally about a kind of a genuine substantive resolution that a one state solution, and attacking the idea of an ethno state to begin with? Or are people going to say that's a bridge too far? Is it a broader sort of an anti-war message, an America first message? I wonder if you've given any thought to that, as people are really hopeful that the Green Party can emerge to kind of address the desire for there to be a meaningful, powerful, and winning independent third party anti-war party in this country. What banner do you think the anti-war movement should sort of be under?
No more endless wars. You see, that is just such a winning message. It is amazing to see the Gallup polls, the Pew polls, the very mainstream polls showing that majority of people don't support Israel anymore, and that it's broader than that. They don't want to be part of these endless wars. And you see people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who understand that. And while she is racist, while she is anti-immigrant, and certainly not the kind of messaging that we want, we see that those, even in the Republican Party, in the base, are really sick and tired of the endless wars. They didn't want the U.S. to go in and attacking Iran. I think the Trump had to position it as a great success to say we're not going to get involved anymore. But, that's what Netanyahu, part of his visit here was to get the U.S. back involved in Iran, which people don't want. So I think Jill has been consistent in her message. The Green Party has been consistent in the message. And I think now more and more people, whether they call themselves Republicans, Democrats, Independent, Green Party, whatever, really resonate with that message of why are we spending the money on these endless wars when we have so many needs here at home. And I think, that while Mamdani, he shouldn't be focusing on international affairs. He's so brilliantly answered the question of what country would you visit by saying, I wouldn't go anywhere, I would stay in New York. That we that are looking at the broader issue and the national issues, we have to make that, I would say, front and center, that we can't have over $1 trillion that is going into a Pentagon budget and still think that we're going to be able to have the needs of the people met or address the climate issues. And certainly when Doge came in and dodged the bullet by not even focusing on the Pentagon, that showed what a joke that whole thing was. But I think the message of no more endless wars is absolutely key and will resonate with the majority of Americans.
Yeah, that's part of what's so frustrating. To your point about, watching Fox and sort of being surprised that people are seeing through it, given how overwhelming the sort of pro-Israel messaging is and the pro-war messaging is. One of the frustrating aspects of the last couple of weeks is how much Democrats have wasted time trying to beat up the most exciting thing happening within the Democratic Party, which is Zohran Mamdani, instead of being focused on the big, beautiful bill, especially when the sort of war implications of that bill are significant. I think Stephen Simler, whose sort of research and advocacy I find to be really valuable, had articulated some stat about the the disproportionate volume added to the budget, specifically from militarism, as compared to the ostensible cuts that were the ostensible purpose of Doge. And the idea that that's not being said on TV, that the Republicans are growing the budget and specifically to chase endless war, is such a missed opportunity, and an opportunity that we know is purposefully missed because it's a bipartisan effort to pursue these kinds of adventures. I see you're back, Dr. Stein. Are you wrapping us up?
Yes, and I'm going to jump in if I could, and just respond to some of this really exciting conversation that I entirely agree with. One thing I want to point to that would be helpful to true progressives in their fight, however futile, in my opinion, in the Democratic Party, it would be helpful to his cause and helpful to progressives, true progressives, radicals outside of the party, and that is for us to have ranked choice voting. New York City City Council, the liberal Democratic City Council in all of its wisdom, refused to allow ranked choice voting to be extended into the general election. So that way they didn't have to worry about actual competition from outside of the party. They would only have it within the party, and we saw how that went. And if we could join forces, I mean, it's not going to happen this general, but if Zoran were to add to his agenda, as you pointed out, Bree, his agenda is very carefully focused. It's very narrow. If he included some system change aspects to his agenda, like ranked choice voting in the general election for New York City, ranked choice voting for New York State, expanding public funding, and restoring ballot access, because right now third parties are illegitimate. We don't have a voice in New York State whatsoever. If we had ranked choice voting, we could collaborate across party lines without losing our identity by joining in within one party or another. We could actually let the agendas fight it out. And I wish there was a way I could get to Zoran Mamdani and ask him to take up the cause of ranked choice voting. I think it would help bring a lot of people who are outside of the Democratic Party and who may have qualms about voting for a Democrat. It's a mixed bag, and I don't want to take one side or the other, but I know a lot of Greens who will be voting for him because there is no other option really, and people don't want the other candidates who are running. So there are a lot of people who will vote for him, but I think there would be a lot of people who would work for him if his agenda broaden in just a small way that would really strengthen him and the cause of progressives in New York City and beyond, and strengthen our power within the political system altogether if he were to do that.
I think that's such an important point. I've said this on my show and elsewhere, but I say this to not take away at all from his unique political talents or all of the organizing work that happened on the ground to get him elected. But it is my opinion that but for Cuomo being cartoonishly evil, and there being ranked choice voting, I don't know that we would have this outcome. The focus on the media upswell around him and how definitely he sort of it took advantage of it, exploited it, and made great videos and rode that wave. I think it ignores that to have that initial willingness to buy in, you have to get around people's, oh, he's not going to win anyway instinct, and the spoiler arguments that you're all too familiar with. And it's the combination of Cuomo being so evil that you can have like a don't rank Cuomo campaign that doesn't then default to a, okay, then the Republican's going to win sort of idea because you have ranked choice. And also led to the cross endorsements that made you be able to hope for and articulate a desire for Zoran without saying, again, I'm going to like hurt the chances of a more qualified person, in quotation marks, like Brad Lander might have seemed to be in the first instance. And then also you get the endorsements from someone like Brad Lander when it looks like he's not going to be the one, that also served this kind of protective effect against some of the claims of anti-Semitism. So all of that perfect storm that I just described started with there being ranked choice voting, which really cuts through the spoiler effect argument that, again, the Green Party is all too familiar with and has had to contend with. And I think that's exactly why you get so much opposition from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, of course, but for
And
our
one
purposes.
one
ranked
last
choice
comment,
voting.
if I could also throw in, which is that New York in so many ways New York City is completely unique because of public transportation, because of the just totally off the charts cost of living and so on. It's really a perfect place for a progressive campaign. And it's hard to move from there to, the rest of New York State and so on. And it's still true that Wall Street runs New York City, Wall Street and the real estate industry. So for a campaign like Zoran's or a green campaign in New York City, you really need to be able to bring a lot of people together. And, so it doesn't make people like me who've been watching progressive campaigns fail time after time, the Obama bubbles and the Bernie Sanders bubbles. It's very hard to get excited about the latest bubble, knowing the power that they're up against. Um, but this could roll out in a way that benefits us all. And what we really need here, we need a political realignment, and we need for progressives within the Democratic Party to be empowered in a way they're never going to be inside of the Democratic Party. And if there were a broader realignment that this could be part of, and ranked choice voting would help make that happen unofficially before it happens with a name on it, it would allow voting across party lines in a way that really unleashes progressives, because thinking about what he's up against, it's pretty ridiculous. And if the party leadership was educating people about the horrors of this, this big, beautiful bill that's really destroying society in every aspect, there might have been some resistance. I mean, it only passed by a vote or two, right, in each house. And there could have been a much bigger public mobilization to stop it. And the Democrats were completely AWOL on that. It was as if they had no idea what was in the bill because they didn't care.
They didn't care. And there's no political cost. And this is a really important point, Dr. Stein. There's no political cost for voting for the thing that's bad for the constituents, right? And I think what's interesting, and an interesting kind of counterexample in Zoran, is that there already does seem to be a little bit of a Zoran effect, where folks that initially said they weren't going to endorse have been coming through to endorse him. You have, I don't know if you guys saw this clip of Richie Torres today praising Zoran and seeming to downplay, for the first time I've ever seen him in the history of his political career, emphasize kind of class politics, the economic concerns of people in his district, and kind of backing off, like diminishing the Israel of it all in this segment, almost seeming to understand that he is maybe facing some serious primary challenges, and feeling the need to rehabilitate the reputation he has of only caring about AIPAC, doing a little man on the street interview sort of Zoran style, hoping to like ape his popularity in the medium. Did you guys see this?
Have not.
Not
Yeah,
yet.
it was great, especially since he's known as, Mr. APAC. and to be now having to kind of eat crow and position himself as somebody who cares more about the cost of living in New York than he does about pleasing his APAC buddies is great. And this effect hopefully will have repercussions among others. But as I say goodbye here for your next guest, I just want to say I think it's positive that we have the Mamdani effect, and positive that we have Elon Musk saying he's forming a new party and taking polls to show how many people want third-party options. Of course, it doesn't say, do you want it to be run by a crazy billionaire? And positive that there are so many people in the Republican base that are so unhappy with what the Republican Party is pushing, that this is a great moment for the Green Party. And since this is a fundraiser, just want to put in my plug to say, let's give and be generous and use this time to build the party. Thank you so much, Jill and others, for having me on. Thank you, Bree. It's always wonderful to be with you, and I love your show. And I look forward to helping build the Green Party.
Thank you, Medea. And we are with you every step of the way. We are following your every move like it is our own. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Medea. And I'm here as the fundraiser, but I think since Medea just made the wonderful pitch, I'm not going to take up any more time. Please, this is a fundraising event. I think our goal is $20,000 for tonight. And I'm told that we are $7,500 in already on that. So please continue giving. As Jill said at the beginning, we need to make some hires at the Green Party national level so that we have a media coordinator, a political director, and people who can be rapid response on our social media and on our website for things that are happening during the day. And before I go, and I'll come back a little bit later, I do want to caution about Mamdani, that people not get emotionally invested in his candidacy. And I think this is the thing that I learned out of the Bernie movement twice, is you cannot put people up on a pedestal. As much good as Bernie may have done to move the movement forward, in the end, he backed out on what many of us felt was his responsibility to continue challenging the establishment. We have to hold Zoran Mamdani's feet to the fire, not just after he is elected, but right now. If he is going to be the person, and he is the only person who can choose to be the candidate that we want him to be. We can't make that choice for him. What we need to let him know is we're going to hold him accountable every step of the way. And somebody like Richie Torres coming out and changing his tune is, don't buy it. The track record is there. Richie Torres should be dismissed. He should be primaried. And I do want to say one last thing, is we do have, people are asking about independent candidates. And Bree, I know you've interviewed her. She's a friend of Jill and mine. I've worked with her for a decade. Shama Sawant is running right here where I am in Washington State. She's running as an independent candidate. She is challenging Adam Smith in Washington's 9th District. Adam Smith has been for 25 years the ranking Democrat on House Armed Services. He is the most conservative Democrat by voting record in Washington State. And that's saying a lot because we have a lot of conservative Democrats in Washington State. He's an absolute ghoul. And so if you can get behind Shama's campaign also, please do that. I just kind of want to leave it there because we do have real leftists running who can make a difference and have a proven track record of making a difference when they are elected. In fact, I can't think of anybody else who has been elected to office who has dug their heels in and says, no, I'm here for the working class 100%. So please, if you can support Shama Sawant, do that. And I will back out now. And Bree, Jill, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to give a shout out for Jackie Schmidt, who put in the chat that she was going to contribute $100. And I want to encourage everyone to contribute what you can. We had some 800 plus people sign up for this. If everybody gave $100, we would have enough to hire those 3 people for a good portion of the year. We would have a good chunk of their salaries covered, and we could really come out swinging here, which is what we have to do because, you know, things are going to hell in a handbasket here really fast. And as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. That political demand, or I should say that demand has to be political if we're going to move forward, if we're going to have some kind of a unifying framework. Otherwise, we are just flailing on 1,000 different fronts where we are under attack. So Mary Beth just said that she chipped in. If you care to just make a note of it in the chat, we would love to see it. Liz Ross just donated $28. These donations really, really add up. So whatever you can contribute, please do. And let me note that we are fundraising here now through the Green Party, and the donation limits are much higher. So you don't have to worry, have you reached your $3,600 threshold. For most people, you can't even get there. But there are a few people out there who do have that capacity. And we know that those who are fortunate to have their, retirements in their, investment funds, those are going gangbusters now for the most part. They're like stock market is at record funding. So those who have the wherewithal to do it, we badly need your support. Consider this the best investment you can possibly make to ensure that we have a future that will be here for our children, because it's going fast on all scores right now. So really just want to encourage everybody to please throw in what you can. And if you care to share, just make a note in the chat and we will give you a thank you and a shout out. At this point, I should introduce our next guest, and that is Butch Ware, who could be the Zoran Mandani of 2026, because he too will be running against an extremely unpopular person who's not an incumbent, but is, and that is Kamala Harris, who is very likely to be the Democratic nominee. If it's not, then the Democratic Party votes are going to be split among 1,000 contenders. And this is exactly where you can take advantage of this top two system, which was intended to shut out third parties. Occasionally, the numbers work out in exactly this kind of scenario to where you can kind of just ride the wave into an open second slot, a relatively open second slot. In the last governor's race in California, the second place candidate got in with only 17% of the vote. So that is our goal in California, is to, between now and then, and we have a year now until, because Butch and his team have gotten started here like a bat out of hell. They are out of the starting gate full bore. And there is a real possibility that we can do the outreach and the educating to like the Latino community and the Hispanic community, who are not happy campers, to say the least, not with either of the mainstream political parties, or the people who don't have health care, considering that the Democrats refused to allow health care in California, even, when they had Democratic trifecta, which is what they always have. They're not, they're playing the role of the Republican Party. So there are many unhappy campers. This could be a real possibility to break open the palace gates. So with that, I think people are familiar with Butch, and Butch was such an amazing discovery and a blessing in our presidential campaign. It was such an honor to run with Butch, to get to know Butch, to feel like he was my best friend practically after our first conversation. We actually discovered that we had very deep roots, in fact, that that joined us in an amazing way, where we're in his, can I call her your second mother?
Sure.
was effectively my mentor within the Green Party. So Butch actually has a
The
deep.
great Annie Young.
The great Annie
Respect.
Young in Minneapolis, who was the first elected official in Minneapolis and was like a commissioner of parks for decades and created the amazing park system in Minneapolis. She was an amazing person that was a very deep part of Butch's family. And little did I know that her sort of adopted son was going to continue the passing of that torch. So it was really quite amazing when we discovered that that was an unknown bond. And there are some things that the universe just sets up, and you know, there are forces at work that are sometimes bigger than us, as Butch himself, I think, would attest. So
Amen.
what else should I say about Butch? Lifelong activist, educator, specializing in the history of empire, colonialism, genocide, and revolution, which is why I really had to have him as a running mate, because he could fill in where I left off. And um, he has put his scholarship into the service of people, especially in regards to the genocide in Gaza, George Floyd's murder in 2020. He organizes teach-ins, community education curricula. He is amazing, and he is a full-blown professor. And just an all-around intellectual activist, artist, organizer, and an incredible dad, I must add. A complete inspiration. So with that, let me turn it over to Bree
Oh,
and
you can't go just yet, Jill. You at least allow me the honor of saying the honor was mine. And I appreciate being dragged kicking and screaming into the world of electoral politics. Thanks.
the only good candidates. The only good candidates are those who had to be dragged kicking and screaming. Thank you.
I think that's right. I think that's right. Well, Butch, I've been looking forward to talking to you because I've been wanting to know what your reaction has been. I don't mean to like look at everything through the lens of Zohran Mamdani, but it is hard not to see the potential for third party movements in the success of that election, which for all intents and purposes, he was an outsider going up
Mhm.
against the establishment. A lot has been made of the sort of social media phenomenon. I just gave my thoughts as to why I think that was enabled and was inextricable from the reality of ranked choice voting and
Mhm.
having a cartoonishly villainous opponent leading the establishment sector of the race, or just not going to be the case in all these other races across the country. So when you look at Mamdani's success, I wonder if you have any reflections on lessons to take away for your own campaign, and or maybe reflections on what you would hope to be able to do in your campaign given the kind of standard that's been set in New
Mhm.
York, if we are able to fundraise and have the infrastructure to try to replicate what Zoran has done.
Yeah, so nice to see you again, Bree. Been looking forward to this conversation as well. And before, I know Medea already stepped off, but if no one is going to say what an amazing pink keffiyeh that was, then I'm going to say it. I'm going to get on tape as having said that and give her my greetings as well. So before I answer the question directly, I'm going to read my Instagram post from the day after Zoran was elected. And I was supporting Zoran's candidacy. I didn't endorse it. I wouldn't endorse a Democrat, but I was supporting Zoran. I know his dad. His dad was an academic mentor for me. I know that he's been trained in revolutionary decolonial epistemology. Here's what I wrote the day after. Watching liberal Dems take victory laps over Zoran. Eye roll emoji. Don't let them shift the narrative and sheepdog you. Mamdani is not the future of the Democrats. The Dems are an irredeemable neoliberal abomination. They're responsible for the Gazan genocide. He may have a future. They don't.
Hmm.
There is no redeeming the Democrat Party, but there are important lessons to be learned from the way that Zoran conducted his campaign and how he was able to be effective in winning it. And I hope that he is able to survive both the efforts to break him and claim him that are going to come from the Democratic Party, and those things will come simultaneously. The progressive wing will try to claim him and co-opt him, and even some of the centrists will. And the money in the party, which is the only thing that matters in that party, is going to do everything that it can to completely break him. So there is no survival ethically inside a party that is complicit in genocide and the construction of cop cities and in the immigration policies that Obama and Biden enacted upon the American people for decades. But there is instruction for outsider candidates and third party candidates on how to move effectively. So I'll give you my first note, because I'm a numbers guy. Like, I like to get into how you make a thing happen. The number that sticks out to me the most is that the single highest voter turnout, um, uh, demographically speaking, when the numbers were broken down by 5-year slices, was the 18 to 24 age bracket. That group voted in higher numbers than any other 5-year segment of the population in the New York City mayoral primary. And that
Wild.
is yeah. And this is something that on the Stein Ware campaign, we were looking to try to crack. I joined the campaign late and was hoping to be able to make a more significant impact in reaching that demographic. But I believe that 18 to 30 demographic is absolutely the key to doing in California what Zoran did in New York City. And as Jill already intimated, it only took 17.7% in a primary that's hidden in June. So only 5.5 million people voted in the 2022 primary. If we're able to mobilize 1.5 million voters, 2 million voters across the state of California, we absolutely can finish second in that primary. And if we finish second in that primary and Kamala is the one that I'm running against, I'm gonna beat the brakes off of Kamala. And that's not even gonna be a competition because nobody is more exposed on the corporate flank, the APAC owned flank, the war machine owned flank, the carceral state owned flank than Kamala is. So she sets up, as you said, as a kind of cartoonishly evil villain to run against in exactly the same way that Cuomo does. But it's going to require fundraising. We've already raised a couple $100,000. We've got a robust volunteer network already in place. We're moving all over the state. It's not New York City. This is the biggest state in the union. And so we're having to build field organizations in San Diego and Santa Ana and Oakland and Sacramento, all up and down the state. But we've been doing that since February, and I'm confident that we'll be able to continue to do so over the next year.
So I love you talking about numbers because I too am really fascinated about the logistical how of it all. So it came out a couple of days ago that Zoran won. More people voted. He won more votes in the primary than like in New York primary voting history.
Yep.
About 1.1 million people voted overall. And Zoran famously mobilized about 50,000 volunteers to door knock. 50,000 volunteers, 1 million voters overall, a city of 11 million people or something like that.
Yep.
It's an insane number of volunteers. I mean, there were more volunteers than people who voted for Eric Adams in the final round last time around or something like that.
Yeah.
So it really spoke to not just the investment in the campaign, but like your baseline number of voters that you were going to be able to get. Now, California is obviously an entire state and a big one at that. And so I'm curious as to what sort of the goals are. And I think this is helpful for fundraising as well, because if people feel like, well, if I give my 20, 50, $100,000 and it's being put toward enabling this X number of volunteers who can knock this many doors, that it makes me feel like it's very purposeful. So what is your sense of how much engagement, a volunteer engagement you're going to need in California to sort of have the effect that you want?
Yeah, I mean, as an academic, I'd like to see receipts and footnotes on those 50,000 volunteers. That number sounds high. I think that we're going to need a similar number to that for statewide success in California without any question. And we're going to need to raise for that June primary 10 and a half months from now, $11 million, which is the campaign spending cap for the primary. If we're able to mobilize that kind of level of volunteer effort. And by the way, so people that have been already registered through the volunteer intake program on the website, I think we're up to 500. We've had over 1,000 people, fill out the form. So we're still bringing volunteers in every day. We're trying to build that infrastructure early, but it is definitely going to require that kind of structure. And people need to understand that volunteers are great, but in order to organize volunteers, you need paid staff. We need field operations coordinators in every one of those 58 counties in the state of California in order to actually maximize the turnout. So this definitely requires not just organizational rigor, discipline, and energy, but it's going to require finances. Jill, I have to feel like I can take a little bit of credit for Jill dropping Malcolm quotes in her opening conversation. We're not outnumbered, we're out organized. And Malcolm goes on to say, after he said we're not outnumbered, we're out organized, he said, never let your enemy tell you how many of you there are.
Hmm.
Never let the man that you are against form your opinions for you. We've been drilled by this duopoly into thinking that we can't mobilize people on this scale. But Zoran was polling at 1% in February and was able to mobilize on that scale. And I've been up and down this state over the last 4 months. We are building kernels of committed activists that are grinding every day in these communities so that we can put that infrastructure on the ground. We just need support.
Yeah, one thing for me, I think that's a really important point. And he was able to hire staff, I think, in large part because of the federal of the New York City has the matching funds
Matching funds.
8-to-1. So he hit his fundraising cap actually kind of early, in large part because you don't have to actually raise all those dollars. You have to raise like an eighth of those dollars. And then you could hire staff. And again, I recommend people listen to this episode of The Dig where they talked to two of the organizers on the DSA side of things who talk about the ability to kind of delegate and manage all of the volunteers because you have to delegate at a certain size, but to begin with, they actually had knowledgeable staffers who knew what they were doing and knew how to get the best effect out of the volunteers that they had. Another thing that I want to ask you about is another observation that I made is that Zoran seemed to put faith in, trust in, and invest in his own sort of ethnic community and other ethnic communities in New York who are disproportionately underserved by the political elite in New York, and to trust that he could go and talk to them and that they would come out for them. I was really moved by the South Asian community in New York and other diasporic communities, including the ones that don't necessarily always lean especially left, like Chinatown and other parts of the city like that really came out strong for Zoran. And of course, he messaged aggressively in the beginning with the halal cart video saying, they're charging you $12. They used to charge $8 or whatever it was. And that really resonated with people. And I have often found that the Democratic Party, as they're trying to reach out to constituents, is sort of indifferent to a lot of those voters because they're considered to be people who don't typically vote, and or because there is a way that Black voters in particular are used as a stand-in for sort of like all racial minorities, which is ridiculous when you're talking about America, where the most populous minority is Latino, and especially in a state like California, where there are such high numbers of Latino voters who are historically more swing voters and gettable new voters as opposed to Black voters who are very faithful Democratic voters, especially older ones in particular. So I do wonder if you've given any thought to outreach, and again, with the fundraising in mind, what you would hope to do to engage in communities that are not often touched politically, first-time voters, and outreach to members of one's own ethnic communities. You did such an amazing job on the Breakfast Club. I think I've told you in the past how my own stepfather, who's not particularly engaged in left politics, really resonated with your appearance on Bad Faith podcast. I mean, it seems to me that there's a lot of opportunity there.
100%. So the point that you raised was actually raised at a campaign event that I did in Bakersfield, where a donor, came up and new donor to the gubernatorial campaign came up and said, if we just mobilize the Muslim community in the state of California, we could get you 30% of the votes that you need to win that primary. Right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
and this is important, as Muslim convert, people know that story. We got 53% of the Muslim vote nationwide in 2024. This is an incredibly significant demographic shift that has been completely hidden by the mainstream media because the implications of it are vast. One of them is that the Democrats are never going to be able to win another presidential election because they have needed every single Muslim vote in order to win any of those swing states, and they're never getting the Muslim vote back. So we have this powerful opportunity to make an appeal inside the Muslim community, inside the African American community, but you pointed to the Latino community, and this is crucial. So the largest minority group in the state of California is white people because because the population of the state of California is 40% Latino and 34% white. So white voters are actually a minority group in the state of California, and getting those gettable Latino swing voters is crucial. The core of our organizing units in most of the places where we're most active throughout the state are people who are active in abolishing ICE, rapid response, ICE Watch, in San Diego and in Santa Ana and in Sacramento. Those are our folks. And that also takes me to a kind of theory of the organizational strategy that's needed to mobilize those groups on the basis of what we learned out of the 2024 campaign. And that is this: we were able to flip the Muslim community from Democrat to Green after they voted Democrat for 60 years by making a targeted appeal to that community on the issue that was most significant to them. Now, we lacked resources, we lacked media coverage, but by making this targeted appeal, we engaged and activated the fundraising and organizing networks that were already extant in those communities. When they came alive, they turned out the vote. And this takes us to more of those reflections on organizing that come out of Malcolm and then go through Kwame Ture and the other folks. Kwame Ture said revolutionaries don't just mobilize around issues, revolutionaries mobilize against systems. Getting people from mobilization around abolishing ICE and protecting immigrants' rights to organizing for political power, that's the task of this campaign, which means we're showing up in those places, not saying, come vote for us. We're saying, here is the Green Party, a political party that you can wield as a weapon to develop the power that is going to be needed to shield your community from harm. And that is an entirely different kind of messaging, even than what Mamdani was messaging on, because that is a messaging that is nourished by the lessons of the Black liberation tradition. And Jill mentioned in the introduction, community education. Literally this weekend, I'm doing we've got, I think, 500 people registered for it. Panther Power, Principle and Practice of Revolutionary Politics, right? I'm doing a live teach-in because this kind of theory of how the Green Party can put itself in service of oppressed communities and become a weapon that oppressed communities wield as an element of resistance, that's the theory behind the campaign.
Yeah, I do think that's right. And as much as there was this, the social media, blah, blah, blah aspect of it, there was a longer game being played, to your point. Not a game, that's not the right way to say it, but there was a longer engagement with communities that Zoran has been at. I mean, the first time he came on my show was like 4 years ago when he was doing the hunger strike for the taxi drivers who are in this usurious debt cycle because of city policy. And that, again, there's an overlap. It's the taxi drivers, but they're also largely immigrant, many Muslim drivers, all those things that kind of coalesce and touched a lot of these, identity groups that ultimately had a lot of trust in Zoran when he ended up running, because he didn't just show up yesterday. And
Yeah.
it was, again, what you're saying. It's the politics are a vehicle for the activism and the interests of the community, not the other way around. And I'm really interested in that in particular, because in the context of the Bernie campaign, there were all these questions that people were asking about, like, why are Latinos so interested in Bernie? And in Nevada in particular, there had been similarly I think it was Chuck Rocha had been given more latitude to invest over the course of a year, not just in a shorter sort of campaign cycle, and community events, barbecues, soccer parties, etc., intended to touch the Latino community, and to ask them, again, this is another thing that Zoran did with that first video, Man on the Street video, asking people, Trump voters in particular, why it was that they hadn't voted for Biden and what they were looking for, and then sort of building a campaign around what they articulated their needs of being. Again, the politics being a vehicle for what the people actually wanted to see reflected. And I think that's really important and really powerful. And the social media aspect of it, where all these people trust you and then want to do videos about you and that takes off, again, does not happen but for those relationships having been formed in the first place. Jill, I see you're back. Are you giving me the...
No, I'm not giving you the hook. I just want to, I have an irresistible need to piggyback on this, because you're talking about all these ingredients for a win. And, connecting with communities, especially, communities on the ground that Butch was, referencing, people fighting ICE, people fighting deportations, people fighting for healthcare, you name it. And we have a presence, and Butch has a presence. What we don't have are the organizers and the dollars to drive it. So I just want to close this loop here. We had an incredible donor who just announced that he will match to the tune of $1,000 if we can get $1,000 worth of donations right now. And if people could just pony up, and if we go over 1,000, all the better, because we have another donor who also said he would donate 500. So if we could pony up $1,500 at least worth of donations right now, if you've already contributed tonight, just put that into the chat now, if you would, so that we can just tally this up and use the last 15 minutes here to see if we can't drive, to $5,000 worth of donations or even more. I know there are donors sitting in this audience who could throw in $500 or $1,000. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of numbers showing up here. Jason, you're a numbers guy. Can you start just keeping track on some of this? We want to get the numbers up so that, we have Butch, we have other candidates like Butch who are running at a lower level, and we can help Butch by having a party that is, reaching out across the country and helping to organize for our real bellwether candidates, for our flagship candidates. And that's really what Butch is. And we have others as well. We have a couple right here in my home state in Massachusetts who are running for local office. And if we have some dollars behind their organizing, we have real winnable campaigns. And as you've heard, Butch's race is actually a real winnable race in the same way. He's a dark horse like Zoran was, but this could happen. This could easily happen. Larry Gross just threw in 280. Thank you so much. We had Jimmy Trasport, who donated 300 earlier tonight. Sabrina Garcia donated $5. Those small donations add up. They're not small in the scheme of things. Jim Brown donated 100 earlier tonight. Riley Kincaid contributed $100 just minutes ago. Rohima Mia donated 128. Jason, where are we? Can you give me some?
So yeah, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of $9,000 right now. Our goal was $20,000. And I think we're cresting 9,000 right now. We do have some, let's see, I was emailed some donors. So Sandy in Buffalo, thank you. In Buffalo, New York, Sandy. I always mess up your last name, Sandy, but we know who you are. So thank you so much. Rohima, Mia, Andrea Layton, Sabrina Garcia, Brad Mitchell, Riley Kincaid. I think Riley's name was just mentioned there. Brianne Hayes, James Trasport, Jim Brown, Brian Good, Dave Sutliff Atias, who, by the way, announced here that he's running for Rochester, New York City Council. Please support Dave. Dave, if you want to drop your link again, please do that. Leah Yannington, Ellen Vanderberg, Mary Beth Rockwell, Elizabeth Ross, Kelly D'Amiglio, Deborah Rosario, all people who have donated right now, and I know there's more, so I will keep announcing those names. We've got Justin Paglino, who was a Senate candidate in Connecticut, and also our volunteer coordinator for the Stein Ware campaign has said he would match $1,000. If $1,000 comes in, he's going to match it. And again, remember that this is for staffing for the Green Party. A lot of people have said, well, what is the Green Party going to do to be, have a more serious presence out there in the public? And the way we do that is that we fundraise so that we have staff who are going to be rapid response on our social media, rapid response on our website, rapid response on editorials and press releases. All of that requires paid staffing. We cannot rely on volunteers. We love volunteers and we'll take anybody's volunteer work. No questions asked. We absolutely need volunteers, but in order to get that sort of consistent, branded, this is what the Green Party is out, people who know the policy deeply, and we can just say, hey, it's your job to respond to this in real time. We simply don't have that right now, and we need to have that. And that is, that is literally a paid position that we need. We need a political director. We need a long-term fundraising director. All of these things are what a competent political party needs to have in place. And we have come out of this election showing that we are the contender to replace the Democrats as the party of the left, but it does require people to make the investment. The Democrats have their billionaire investors. We need, and every time a progressive runs, every time a true progressive runs, you see, let me just go back to Shama Sawant right now. The number of donations that she has gotten from across the country dwarfs what Adam Smith is raising from. Now, he's raising much bigger donations and he's raising corporate PAC donations. But if you're talking about what is the actual popularity of the candidate, Shama has got it hands down. People don't like it. And that shows in the number of people who are donating to her campaign, even though they're small donations. And that's what the Green Party needs. So whether it's $5, $10, $25, please kick in that money. And for those of you watching on YouTube, I'll get just a second, Jill. For those of you watching on YouTube, we have a dedicated link for this fundraiser, gp.org/Jill. Go to gp.org/Jill and donate there. And that goes directly into what we are identifying here as this fundraiser. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And
Go ahead,
I just put in 111. You guys know how I am about doing everything on the one. And I just saw that Raquel wants to donate 1,000 to gp.org/Jill and 1,000 to Butch Ware for Gov. So let's get her the support needed to do that. Yeah.
That is so awesome. And I want to piggyback on that to say that the small donations that were just donated now and which people shared in the chat, once we said that if we could raise 1,000 tonight for Justin Paglino, that he would throw in 1,000 if that was matched. So we made that from small donations. And then Medea Benjamin just kicked in $1,000 as well. So there's 3,000 right there. And that is like, that's how it's done.
That's how it's done. So thank you so much.
Keep it going. Yeah, that's awesome. And I encourage people, please, keep it coming because this is the missing link. We have the numbers, we have the solutions, we have the values, and we have the perfect storm for transition right now. This really is a confluence of crisis and a confluence of opportunity. And, our lives really depend literally on changing our trajectory right now.
And the support that you give, to the Green Party at the national level allows the Green Party at the national level to do outreach all over the country, which will in turn help your local candidates. I do want to give a shout out to Andy Ellis, who is running for governor in Maryland. Andy is a fantastic candidate, just absolutely down the line, competent on policy, speaks well to people. You know, we should be doing everything we can to support Andy. I heard tonight that Edie Arndell, who is helping us with the tech on this live stream right now, is going to run for lieutenant governor in Illinois. Butch and I just talked to a fantastic immigration attorney in Bakersfield, California. We had a conversation with him yesterday. He wants to run for lieutenant governor alongside Butch in California. And now let me just shout out, we're looking for somebody to step up and run for attorney general. And having those three positions as Green Party members running in California, the most populous and wealthiest state in the union, we can really make an impact. That's what people want to know. When you get elected to that office, what kind of support system do you have around you? And it's the same thing people are asking, who's going to run for Congress? How are we going to get our foot in the door for Congress? We do have people running for Congress, and you yourself can step up to run for Congress on the Green Party ticket and have that national support if we can get those pieces in place at the national level here.
And just very quickly, another big shout out to Laura Wells, who has been such a powerhouse in developing the Green Party for years. One of my colleagues, one of my comrades in arms over the decades here, that has been fighting the good fight in the hard times and the good times. And Laura just contributed $280. Thank you so much, Laura. That's awesome. Just putting in a plug for people to keep it coming, because it's these donations that fill that gap. We are really poised right now for filling the gap in progressive politics, because the Democrats aren't doing it, the Republicans aren't doing it, and people are waking up to that fact. So there is a vacuum in progressive politics. We're here with the policies that people support and are literally dying for, but don't know about. And that's what this fundraising is all about, to get that word out.
Let me shout out a couple more people. We've got in the chat, we've got Alexandria Keating-Sofiakis, who's running against Brad Schneider, one of the biggest AIPAC recipients in the House in Illinois' 10th district. Alexandria, please drop your link in the chat there. And we also have one of our other campaign staffers, Patrick Dillon. He's not in the chat right now, but I do want to give out a shout out to Patrick. Patrick's running for Longmont, Colorado City Council. So the Green Party at the national level can help all of these candidates. People say, oh, where's the Green Party in between elections? Well, right now we've got the in between elections, right? Not just the midterm elections, but we've got the off-cycle elections, which are all city council type elections. So love it. Thank you. So please, now is the time to help the Green Party get those structural pieces in place so that we can help candidates in every cycle, 25, 26, 27, and 28. And we're going to need to raise money for ballot access also. We are going to have to fight the ballot access fight starting around 2026 again. We're going to have to review all of the states that we want to start hitting the ground on for ballot access, and that's going to take money.
And when you think about donating, you're not really donating to the party. The party is just the vehicle, and it's the vehicle for people power. It's a vehicle for us, because we are not taking donations, and we're not taking marching orders from AIPAC and the war contractors and big pharma and insurance companies and the rent, the rent lords, the bosses, the landlords. This is why Mamdani's agenda was just like a piece of our agenda. It was like just a portion of what we offer. We offer what he was promoting, but much more. And we're taking on the system that will stifle him. And whether it stifles him before he gets into office and prevents him from getting in, or whether it stifles him once he's in office, he's up against a very difficult overwhelming force that you cannot take on without a wider coalition. So it's going to take bigger building and more of us and a bigger agenda. You know, it's like when Martin Luther King talked about the triple evil of militarism, racism, and extreme materialism. You can't cherry pick them, you know, you got to fix them all together. And so we've got a big agenda. We're there. It's just this little stuff that we need. We need those contributions. So keep them coming. Jason, do you have any more on numbers we've done?
I haven't gotten anything texted to me right now. I do have some more names to shout out though of my will download the graphic. George is sending me stuff. So and if we don't get to your name, apologies. But Glenn Bennett, it looks like we have over $12,000 raised right now. That's the number that just came in, $12,000. So Greg Jan, who has been a huge support to our campaign in California. Thank you so much, Greg. Let's see here. It looks like I'm getting the same text over and over again, so maybe I don't have any more names to add. Yanis Crawford, Laura Wells, who already got shouted out. Thank you, Laura. Max Stager, Don Jones, Medea, of course, Larry Gross. I think that covers it, but keep it coming. Keep it coming.
Great. And I have to give a shout out for Brianna's hat, which is awesome. Looks great on you.
You
You're
know,
our
Jason,
model.
Jason knows I've been beating this drum, but I just so strongly feel like people would happily donate $75 if they knew they could get this boss felt hat along with it. I'm just saying, people like merch. I wish the world didn't
People do
operate
like
this
merch, and
way.
I'm wearing a little bit of Butch Ware merch right now. So if do we have do we only have the volunteer ones right now, or we're going to be on revealing some merch for the Butch Ware campaign here sometime. I want to say in the next week or two there will be merch to get. So please check out Butch's campaign for that also. But yes, people love merch.
And
You know, you hire
yeah.
money to hire people also means hire to have money to hire dedicated design folks. We know the Zeron campaign was churning out churning out that merch and putting the insignia and stuff that they got designed for public use, so people were able to make their own stuff. And all of that stuff comes together to make people feel invested and to give free advertising.
And that's exactly why we need paid staff, you know, whose responsibility it is to keep up with these great ideas, these no-brainer things that we should be doing. And Green Party merch you can get, by the way, at shop.gp.org. So there is some stuff, but we got to get those hats, the Green Party hats. I don't know that we have Green Party hats. So
No, and everybody wants a hat, and also
yeah.
some stuff in different colorways. Let's not all black.
Let me
Some
shout out a
has to be
few more
black.
names right now. Kelly Cobblemeyer, thank you. Christopher Martin, Betsy Gardstein, Baba Kofi Wasiana, Kelly Thompson, Henry Babcock, Alan Kiviat, Cindy Matthews, Jeff Paris, thank you, Jeff, Julie Rogan, and I think I said Denise Crawford, but all people who have donated. And I think we're coming up on the last couple of minutes here. So Jill, Bree, Butch, any final words? I'm going to go ahead and step back.
Oh, I'll just thank everybody for making this happen on short notice. I also want to thank the people in the back room, and that includes Georgia Davenport, our fundraising director, who just helped pull all the details and the big picture together. Elena Costa, who did really fabulous graphics. LeBeau Padnow, who is helping with tech, finally got us up, I think, on the live streams and is now the co-chair in Florida. Amazing, LeBeau. And Ede Arndell, who was also helping run the Zoom and is now a candidate for, what was it, for governor Congress in Illinois, candidate for
Lieutenant Governor for
Lieutenant
Illinois.
Governor. Okay, great. Yes, thank you so much. So big thank you to everyone in the back. Thank you to everybody for turning out tonight and for leading the charge. And, you know, when you're under attack, there's usually a good reason for it. And the quote attributed to Gandhi, although I'm not sure it was him, it's contested, but it might well have been, is, you know, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And we've been in that fight you stage for a while now. And many of us are under attack. And Bree, that was one of the questions I wanted to interview you about too, was just see how you're doing because you're in such a high visibility position. But, you know, all of us experience this in fascinating ways that would be kind of a Zoom unto itself.
Yeah, what
But-
happened to you? Weren't they trying to press charges on you for when you were assaulted by the cops?
Well, they still are.
They
Yes.
still are, yeah.
Yes, I have a legal defense fund, but that's another story.
Goodness
Yeah,
gracious.
yeah, I know. We'll see. But, you know, I'm used to it because before this, there was the Senate Intelligence Committee. I was investigated for 3 years as a Russian asset. You know, it's one thing or another. But, you know, we live to fight another day and we get stronger for each of these fights. And, you know, Francesca Albanese, you know, just had sanctions put on her, you know, kind of very big time, you know, and the advocates and the peace protesters and the genocide opponents, you know, who are under attack right now or at risk for deportation or having their citizenship stripped from them. You know, this is, I'm sorry to say, this comes with the territory. You know, this is McCarthyism. We've seen it before. It is not only a badge of honor to be under attack, but it is also real evidence that you are really making waves. The fact that they are working so hard to try to silence us, you know, the fact that Bree was removed from her position at the Hill after Katie Helper and I don't know who else had also been stripped. You know, it's such a badge of integrity and honor, and we're in the best possible company, and we are. So it's a sign of our success, and, you know, keep the faith. This is, this is our moment, and we are living to fight another day stronger and stronger as the empire is unraveling before our very eyes in more ways than you can count. Having been an activist really most of my life, but, you know, a political activist since the year 2000 when I first got tricked into running for office for the first time, you know, so as an observer of political organizing for a couple decades, I have never seen the kind of uprising that's going on right now. So while it's a very scary and dark time, you know, it's also a time of incredible possibility and hope. I just looked up the Chinese proverb for it today. And the Chinese proverb is that crisis is an opportunity riding on a dangerous wind. And that's where we are. You know, the wind is at our back. It's time to raise our sails, you know, and ride as far and wide and high and fast as we can. Our lives depend on it. And thanks to everyone, I feel so blessed to be a part of this network, which feels to me like family. You know, a family of choice, which is a very special kind of family, to be among people who share this incredible wisdom. And it's amazing how people who ought to know better are just blinded by their own privilege and, self pride and hubris and all that. So I just feel so grateful for everyone who is with us tonight and a part of this incredible endeavor. Big thank you to all of our speakers and all our supporters. And we're only just getting started.
Jill, can I just, I was also asked to say a word. Can I just say, can we give Jill some thanks? and everybody in the space, Jill for suffering the slings and arrows of outrageous Democrats for 20 years. Thank you. And thank you for tonight. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your service. And thank you for continuing, to light the path for the rest of us that are trying to help folks get free and stay free. So appreciate you. I have to go because my childcare, my carriage turned back into a pumpkin. So I got to go. But thank you for everything. And appreciate y'all. Thank you,
Thank
Bree.
you.
Bye,
We'll
Butch.
talk soon. I got to get back on bad faith sooner than later.
Please do. The
All
door's
right.
always open.
Cool. Take
Bree,
care.
Bree, give us a closing word. Much love, Butch.
I don't know how I can follow you, Jill, but to echo Butch's sentiments and gratitude to you for being the face of a movement that attracts so much pushback because it is, in fact, on the right track. And it has been an enormous pleasure and like real learning experience and growth experience to be involved with the Green Party as marginally as I have been, and to be doing what I can in my capacity as sort of a media personality to draw people's attention to the failures of the duopoly and the fact that there is actually another alternative that they could be fighting for instead of sort of coming up with excuses for why they're not invested in it. And I do feel something shifting and the tide is turning. And I hope that you mentioned that, or maybe it was Butch that mentioned liberals capitalizing and exploiting and appropriating Zoran's win. I think the opportunity should be for the Green Party to not exploit the win, but to use it as an opportunity to demonstrate how impossible it is to win within the Democratic Party, to succeed within the Democratic Party, because they have so much more energy devoted toward defeating the principles that are shared between Zoran and the Green Party than they actually do in defeating Trump, who they have been saying for years is a fascist, but a fascist that's less important the week of the passage of the big, beautiful bill than beating up on a socialist prospective mayor, all because he has the temerity to say that genocide is wrong. So I look forward to continuing to try to publicize the Green Party as the anti-war party in the United States of America that people should be paying attention to and investing in. And I want to tip my hat to everybody. Who donated tonight to help facilitate that becoming an increasing reality.
Amen to that. With that, I think we give everybody a good night and much love and to be continued. Thank you all so very much. Toss something into the hat.
Good night, everyone.